Dear guests, dear colleagues, it is my great pleasure to welcome you to this first of the 3 plenary sessions at ECR 2026, which will explore one of the most pressing questions that applies today to radiology, namely where the integration of artificial intelligence will lead our specialty. Over the past decade, it has become fashionable for many stakeholders and politicians to make predictions about AI in radiology. Everybody talks about it, and articles and opinions about AI are published almost every day. There is no doubt that the impact of AI will be major. Yet we all know that predictions about the futures are quite difficult, and that technological progress does not come only with benefits, but also with challenges and sometimes even disruptions. And despite all hype and enthusiasm, at close view, many important questions about AI still remain open, and critical thinking is required to answer them. Today, we have 2 outstanding speakers from the other side of the Atlantic, where the pace of digital technology and AI is set. And it is my greatest pleasure that they agreed to share their views about the pros and cons of AI in radiology. Dr. Nina Kottler is a practicing radiologist with more than 2 decades of experience, uniquely combining clinical expertise with a background in applied mathematics and optimization theory. She has spent her career focused on how innovation can be translated into meaningful improvements in quality, efficiency, and value in medical imaging. As the first radiologist to join the Radiology Partners in 2013, she has played a central role in shaping one of the largest radiology practices in the world. In her current role as Associate Chief Medical Officer for Clinical AI, she leads the vision, the development, and the large-scale deployment of AI across a national clinical enterprise, confronting every day the realities of what it means to integrate AI responsibly into clinical workflows. Beyond this, Dr. Kottler is deeply engaged with the broader AI and radiology communities through her work with Stanford AIMI, the American College of Radiology, the RSNA, the SIIM, and as a leader in advancing quality, equity, education, and best practices in AI-enabled care. Complementing her perspective is Dr. Charles Kahn, a highly influential figure in radiology informatics and medical AI worldwide. Dr. Kahn is professor and a vice chair of radiology at the University of Pennsylvania, a practicing radiologist and a scholar whose work has helped define how imaging data, information standards, and intelligence systems are used across healthcare. With formal training in mathematics, computer science, and medicine, Dr. Kahn has spent decades at the forefront of AI, health services research, and knowledge representation. He has held numerous leadership roles, including president of the American Röntgen Ray Society, chair of RSNA's Radiology Informatics Council, and editor of Radiology Artificial Intelligence. He has also served for 6 years on the ECR eHealth and Informatics Subcommittee. His contributions have shaped how radiology thinks about data, technology, and its evolving professional identity. Now, as you have already seen yesterday at your opening ceremony, this year's Congress often refers symbolically to themes of classic mythology. So the question they chose as the title for their lecture fits in nicely. Namely, did we open Pandora's box? The myth of Pandora is about the first human woman who was created upon the orders of Zeus with the intention to punish humanity after Prometheus had stolen fire and given it to mankind. Pandora was crafted by Olympian gods to be irresistible but dangerous, something like a beautiful evil, combining beauty with a sharp mind and tongue, but also with a very curious nature. Well, a well-known cliché about female characteristics that exists also today. Pandora was sent to Earth with what was originally referred to as a jar, but in the later translations of the 16th century also as a box, which she was forbidden to open on her way. In the container were many evils, miseries, and hardship that would certainly end the paradise existing on Earth. Now, unfortunately, Pandora, driven by her curiosity, opened the container, thus releasing its content. Many plagues and evils such as greed, evil, toil, and misery immediately escaped from her box, making humanity suffer ever since. When she realized the result of her curiosity, she quickly closed the lid, just in time to keep one important element trapped in the container to be conserved for humanity, namely hope. Now, referring to this powerful metaphor from Greek mythology, this lecture will examine the hopes and the perils associated with AI in radiology. Now, please enjoy this plenary lecture from Nina Kottler and Charles Kahn.
The story of Pandora's box is one of the most well-known from Greek mythology. It is rare to have such a simple yet powerful image to illustrate such a fascinating concept. The idea of curiosity, the unknown, immense power, and great danger.
As the myth tells us, Pandora, a figure who embodies human curiosity, is given a box by the gods. However, along with it, she is left with a single rule: do not open it. But as the myth teaches us, the tension between curiosity and prohibition is rarely one that we can resist.
What happens next surely transforms the story into a cautionary tale, a warning for all those who dare to disobey the rules. As soon as she lifted the lid, she unleashed perils for all humanity to suffer. Out came evil, grief, suffering, disorder. Startled and scared, Pandora tries to close the box, but the damage has already been done. And yet, not everything was lost. At the very bottom of the box remains hope. Hope that might, in time, outweigh all that escaped before it.
This ancient story might seem far removed from our daily lives, thousands of years after it was first told. But in many ways, Pandora's box is a fitting metaphor for scientific and technological progress. A being driven by pure curiosity, a scientist, explores an idea until it is released into the world, bringing with it both benefit and risk. You see, in science, curiosity is not discouraged, it's cultivated. And while the outcomes have not always been entirely good, they have never been entirely bad either.
When it comes to medicine, few fields are as closely intertwined with technology as radiology. Radiologists have long stood at the forefront of innovation. For decades, our specialty has been shaped by the marriage of medicine and technology, from the first X-ray plate to multi-slice CT, high-field MRI, and now deep learning and radiomics. Each innovation has expanded what we can do, while also increased the responsibility that comes with it.
If we view this story through the eyes of a radiologist, as most of us in the room naturally do, it becomes clear that Pandora's box of AI in radiology was not opened out of curiosity. It was opened out of necessity. We are living through a profound and growing mismatch between imaging volume and radiologist capacity. The work continues to increase, but time does not. Radiologist burnout has reached unprecedented levels, and attrition has increased by over 50% in the past few years. Also, a question emerges. Could AI help? What if this moment allows us not to add AI at the margins, but to fundamentally reimagine our workflow, guided by the radiologists who use them every day? Today, a radiologist workstation looks like this. Too many screens, too many inputs, and too many demands competing for our attention. Even when AI is present, it is often bolted on at the edges. More tools for us to manage. As a result, our focus has become fragmented across countless work streams, when in reality, it should be centered on one thing: our patients. If we allow AI to automate background operational processes and help integrate all components of our workflow, we create space for radiologists to think, connect, and care. And in that context, perhaps this box is worth opening.
As we stand before the Pandora's box of AI, it is essential to consider not only the promises it holds, but also the consequences that might emerge once it's opened. Acknowledging the challenges is not a sign of resistance. It is the first step towards navigating them responsibly. And only through the active engagement of radiologists can AI's potential be fully realized for both our patients and our profession. Let's take this opportunity to take a peek into this box and see if the evils it holds are really as bad as advertised. After all, what could go wrong by taking a quick look? Okay, that was a bit scarier than I was told it would be. Maybe the graphics department having a little fun there, a little drama. But what these terrifying images show can be true to a certain extent. In the last years that we've been witnessing the implementation of AI in radiology, we have noticed a number of negative aspects of using AI. One concern that comes to mind when talking about increasing AI integration is the potential erosion of physician expertise due to over-reliance on technology. Radiology is fundamentally a cognitive specialty. It requires pattern recognition, synthesis of clinical context, and decision-making stemming from experience. If AI systems take over these routine tasks, there's a risk that trainees and even experienced radiologists may experience loss of some of these skills. The challenge, therefore, is not the presence of AI itself, but how it's used as an assistive tool that augments human expertise rather than a substitute. As an artificial system limited by the data on which it's trained, AI draws conclusions from the information it's given, but it may ignore or lack the ability to understand the broader context. It focuses on text over context. For example, an AI model that assessed the risk of death from pneumonia incorrectly rated asthma patients as having lower risk. Why? Because patients with a known history of asthma are admitted directly to intensive care because they are at higher risk. Another issue that AI can introduce is artificial certainty. AI generates all or none classification into categories, providing outputs that are often binary: disease present or absent, malignant or benign. This artificial certainty can obscure important nuances, such as borderline findings, technical limitations, or clinical scenarios with multiple plausible diagnoses. Finally, much like the one on the stage behind me, AI is a black box. Its internal decision-making processes are not easily understandable, even for its own developers. Radiologists are trained not only to recognize findings, but also to justify their conclusions, explain uncertainty, and find the link between images, diseases, and clinical data. It can be difficult to trust a model that cannot explain its reasoning.
And that's not all. Both AI and humans are biased. Bias can quietly erode an AI model's performance before deployment and influence how radiologists interpret its output once it enters clinical practice. Because most AI is designed to augment, not replace physicians, the most consequential biases often emerge after deployment, at the human-AI interface. This is a confusion matrix, with radiologist accuracy on the vertical axis and AI accuracy on the horizontal axis. The diagonal represents scenarios where radiologists and AI disagree, and it is along this axis that bias is the most consequential. Our goal is simple: accept AI when it is right and reject it when it is wrong. What makes this difficult is not the goal itself, but the execution. Because in these disagreement cases, clinicians may overtrust, undertrust, or appropriately calibrate their judgment when working alongside AI. Automation bias and complacency are forms of overtrust. Automation bias occurs when clinicians place too much confidence in AI positive findings. AI is imperfect. It overcalls findings. These false positive results can happen frequently, particularly in the setting of uncommon diseases. Complacency, on the other hand, reflects overtrust in negative AI outputs. Negative AI results dominate because most pathologies are relatively uncommon. Over time, it's natural for clinicians to become less vigilant when AI falsely reports no abnormality. At the opposite end of the spectrum is distrust, when insufficient understanding of AI leads radiologists to disregard accurate AI outputs. In each of these scenarios, the human-AI partnership performs worse than either humans or AI operating alone. Generative AI introduces its own class of errors. We all know that Gen AI can hallucinate, but what does that actually mean? Are all hallucinations the same? The answer, of course, is no. They're distinct categories of language hallucination, each with different causes and risks. Let's review 2 examples of different types of Gen AI hallucinations from a language model that generates an impression from the findings of a radiology report. Notice that the radiologist did not specify the laterality of this femur, left femur or right femur. The AI-generated impression introduced a laterality that was not provided by the radiologist, selecting right. This highlights a common fill-in-the-blank behavior, where AI supplies information that is typically included in radiology reports when it is missing. Because the model was not referencing the images, it could not determine which femur was imaged, and it guessed right incorrectly. The incorrect laterality was noticed by the radiologist and fixed in the final report. This behavior is not limited to laterality. Similar errors can occur with other commonly expected report descriptors, such as severity, stability, and size, any time that they are omitted from the original dictation. In this case, AI inserted the most statistically common explanation for pelvic free fluid, ovarian cyst rupture. However, the patient is male, making this attribution biologically implausible. This illustrates a classic nearest neighbor hallucination, where the model fills in familiar pattern rather than reasoning from patient context. The radiologist identified the error and appropriately corrected the final report.
However, as we said earlier, it's not all bad either. So how about we take a look at the potential positive sides that AI can bring? While we might not end up living in such a utopia, there are many ways that AI improves the daily practice of radiology and can help us add value as physicians. We can use AI to help solve unmet needs. We know that imaging volumes in the US, in Europe, and throughout the world are growing faster than the supply of radiologists. So can we turn to AI to take over some of that work? We can use AI to improve outcomes that matter. When used as a radiologist tool, AI can mitigate some of the daily issues we encounter. While AI maintenance and development is still on the expensive side, in the long run, we can expect it to help us decrease costs and help us use resources wisely. Automating repetitive tasks can help us reduce the daily workload, which will in turn help us put patients first and provide us with the time and energy to serve them with compassion. Finally, AI can help us build long-term trust with our patients by enabling us to communicate with them persuasively and with competence. One of the best gifts AI can give us is more time to focus on our primary concerns, more time to dedicate to our patients, more time to serve as consultants to our colleagues. Machines already address some of the repetitive, tedious, and time-consuming tasks in medicine. Nearly 99% of all electrocardiograms are read by automated systems. The few cases that manage to confuse the machine are reviewed by a cardiologist. Similarly, 95% of pap smears are read solely by an automated system. In this way, automation serves as a force multiplier to allow physicians to serve many more patients than they could otherwise. Laboratory medicine, too, has moved from analyzing one sample at a time to tools that perform hundreds of analyses simultaneously. One of the yet unanswered questions, must AI be better than every radiologist for us to use it? As you might expect, not all radiologists are equal in their abilities. Here are data that show the cumulative distribution of radiologists' AUC scores, basically their performance at reading screening mammograms. And when you render that into another curve, it follows something like a bell curve distribution. If we imagine that at one end, we have Laszlo Tabar, and let's say someone at the other end, someone else. This means we always work with a range of abilities. It's fair to say it's a little unrealistic to expect AI to mimic only the best of the best. In fact, if we wish to use AI to help us with the boring, repetitive tasks, we do not need it to perform as the best radiologist. As long as it's competent, consistent, fast, we can make use of it. In a recent editorial published in Radiology Artificial Intelligence, Doe and Ball point out that to use AI responsibly, radiologists must understand not only how often it is correct, but also why and when it fails. Equally important is identifying the clinical settings in which AI meaningfully adds value and those in which human expertise must remain the primary driver of decision-making. This statement reiterates how critical physician involvement is in the use of AI.
Beyond simply offloading routine tasks, AI has its greatest impact when used to enhance human performance. When radiologists and AI work together, the combined system can be far more effective than either alone. This synergy exists because human and AI strengths are not identical. They excel at different tasks, and critically, they make different kinds of errors. We have found this to be true across every AI model we deploy in my practice. If an AI tool does not enhance diagnostic performance, we simply don't deploy it. Let's review 6 real cases from clinical practice that show both sides of the human-AI partnership. When AI catches what we miss, and when we catch what AI gets wrong. A 77-year-old female presents status post-CABG. The radiologist reports expected postoperative changes. The AI identifies small bilateral pneumothoraces that were missed in the report. A 67-year-old male presents with left knee pain. The radiologist notes tri-compartment degenerative changes. The AI identifies an osteochondral defect in the left medial femoral condyle. 35-year-old male with subarachnoid hemorrhage. The radiologist states that the bones are unremarkable. The AI identifies a subtle right temporal bone fracture. 55-year-old male with stroke. A non-contrast head CT was performed. The AI calls extensive parenchymal hemorrhage. The radiologist recognizes that a recent CTA of the head was performed and correctly interprets the hyperdensity as contrast staining. A 53-year-old male presents with dyspnea. The AI reports a right medial and basilar opacity. The radiologist correctly identifies the patient's overlying hand and wrist, causing a pseudo-opacity. A patient presents with right anterior and lateral lower rib pain after a fall. The AI identifies a non-displaced right ninth rib fracture. The radiologist confirms the right ninth rib fracture and detects an additional non-displaced right 10th rib fracture not identified by the AI. This case illustrates an important principle of human-AI collaboration. When AI flags a finding, the radiologist should deliberately search for related pathology the AI might have missed. Today, most radiologists are using narrow AI models. systems designed to perform a single binary classification for triage, detection, or diagnosis. Now let's look deeper into Pandora's box and consider a more general class of AI called multimodal foundation models, specifically vision language models. These more powerful AI models have the potential to enhance detection even further, while also increasing clinical capacity and helping reduce burnout across a multitude of tasks simultaneously. How do they achieve this? In narrow AI systems, the model is designed to perform a single task. In this example, it's identifying lung nodules on a chest X-ray. Detection is a binary task. The nodule is present or absent. In contrast, general AI models can not only detect findings, but also describe them in the way that we do as radiologists. Rather than searching for a single abnormality, these models evaluate the entire study, characterizing all relevant findings. In practice, they function like AI residents, pre-drafting a radiology report that the radiologist reviews and refines. These systems are already being tested in clinical practice and are beginning to show what is possible, improving quality, streamlining workflows, and easing the growing burden on radiologists. Vision language models offer a glimpse into a future in which physician capacity is no longer the limiting factor, helping restore balance between the ever-increasing imaging volumes and the radiologist workforce that serves our patients.
While we were brainstorming on how to visualize the next part of this lecture titled The Reality, our graphics department had a conversation with the current king of AI, ChatGPT. The following clip reenacts the situation exactly how it went down.
Create an X-ray image of a hand with 7 fingers. Hey Chat, this hand has 6 fingers.
Good catch. You've just unintentionally demonstrated one of the most typical AI failure modes. This isn't a coincidence. It's a structural issue.
Okay, I understand. But now that you know what went wrong, can you now create an X-ray image of a hand with 7 fingers? This hand has 5 fingers.
Good catch.
I guess there are still a lot of things to catch.
Still, well, I think it's safe to say that while AI shows promise in helping radiologists, the reality will be much less drastic than what was shown in either of the animations. Yes, there will be improvements and downsides to using AI, but we are far from the apocalypse or perfection. In fact, though, the perils of AI can be far subtler and far stranger. In this now classic example, an AI model was taught to detect pneumonia on chest X-rays. The developers wisely used data from 2 sites. At one hospital, mostly inpatients, 30% of the images showed pneumonia. At the other, mostly outpatients, only 1% of the cases had pneumonia. They asked the computer, "What do you see that tells you that there's pneumonia?" Turns out, AI didn't focus on the lungs, it looked at the letter L. Some other examples include AI detecting pneumothorax by actually seeing the chest tube, or when it successfully diagnosed tuberculosis by spotting the words TB clinic burned onto a set of chest X-rays. AI systems can be brittle. An AI system trained on one set of data doesn't necessarily do well on other data. Dr. John Eng and his colleagues at Johns Hopkins University showed that when we test AI systems on data different from that on which the AI model was trained, performance goes down. And AI systems don't always understand what we ask of them. John kindly shared images of his family taken at a nice holiday gathering when he asked Photoshop's AI tool to give a photo of his aunt and uncle a white background. Not what was intended. However, it's not all just silly and bad. AI is already making improvements. Some are incremental and some are truly great. This example from my own department shows how one can connect imaging-derived data, such as bone density, spleen volume, to the patient's phenotypes and to the human genome. This illustrates the way that AI extends our opportunities to deliver precision medicine. And then we have this.
What do you see?
I see a CT scan of the brain. It's an axial view, and it looks like a non-contrast image. I can see a possible mass in the region of the cella.
Do you want to see anything else?
Yes, I would like to see the image with the bone window. The bony structures of the skull are clearly visible. I can also see the temporal bones and the sinuses. Is there anything specific you want me to look for?
What about the lesion you were describing previously?
Ah, yes. On the bone window image, the bony structures are more prominent, but it makes it harder to visualize the soft tissue lesion. You may need to go back to the non-contrast image to see the soft tissue mass, which I described as being in the region of the cella.
This initially sounds like a conversation between two colleagues, or maybe a senior radiologist and a trainee. But no, this is a conversation that my colleague, Dr. Luciano Prevedello of The Ohio State University, had with an AI system. He showed several scans to a program. AI described what was on the screen, asked follow-up questions, and ultimately made the diagnosis.
Given the patient's history of progressive visual disturbance with bitemporal hemianopsia and the imaging showing a mass in the sella turcica, the differential diagnosis should include pituitary adenoma, craniopharyngioma, and meningioma. A pituitary adenoma is the most likely diagnosis given the location and appearance.
What do you think about the signal characteristics of this image?
Okay, on the coronal T2 weighted image, the mass in the sella turcica is hyperintense, meaning it appears brighter compared to the surrounding brain tissue. This is a typical finding for a pituitary adenoma. The mass also has a heterogeneous signal, which could suggest areas of necrosis or hemorrhage.
Based on this image, would you add other possibilities in your differential or not?
Based on the hyperintense signal on the T2 weighted image, a Rathke cleft cyst could be considered, although it usually has a more cystic appearance. The heterogeneous signal within the mass might also suggest a hemorrhagic pituitary macroadenoma. Therefore, I would add Rathke cleft cyst and hemorrhagic pituitary macroadenoma to the differential diagnosis, but I still think that a pituitary adenoma is the most likely diagnosis.
However, AI was wrong. The actual diagnosis was not one of the ones suggested. I must give it credit, though. The AI took it very well and apologized politely.
Well, you didn't mention chordoma in the possibilities.
You are absolutely right. I apologize for that oversight. Chordoma should have been included in the differential diagnosis from the beginning, given the location of the lesion. Thank you for pointing that out.
A+ for politeness. Bear in mind that this video is now almost a year old, and he was interacting with the AI system in real time, and it was providing the interpretation of the images in that way. We know how fast AI improves, so it's quite possible that today's model would make the correct diagnosis. But as we said, do we even need it to do all that on its own?
As AI evolves, so too will our roles. Radiologist has long served as the physician's physician, providing consultation to referring clinicians by synthesizing the information available to us. Today, that information is largely morphological, derived from the visual components in radiology images that humans can identify. But as technology advances, the scope of information we can access will expand, both within and beyond imaging. AI and related technologies will elucidate imaging biomarkers to predict not only the presence or absence of disease, but also disease risk, subtype, and the most effective treatment options, often without the need for an invasive biopsy. We will increasingly incorporate continuous data streams from patient wearables, allowing us to identify emerging conditions earlier, intervene sooner, and in some cases, prevent disease altogether. This shift moves us from population-level sick care toward truly personalized healthcare.
As the technology-enabled physician's physician, radiologists are uniquely positioned to consolidate and interpret a rapidly expanding universe of information, not only imaging, but the broader landscape of healthcare data. Our roles will change, but with that change comes the opportunity to significantly expand the value we provide. To fully realize the benefits of AI, we must be willing to let go of some of the work that has long defined how we practice today and remain open to what comes next.
Let's return to the myth of Pandora's box. Too often, the story is remembered only for the misfortune that it unleashed. But its deeper meaning lies in what remained after the turmoil settled. Pandora did not open the box out of recklessness. She opened it out of curiosity and hope. And after all the dangers had escaped, the one thing remained: hope. In radiology, that hope is our collaboration, human insight guided by AI and accelerated by technology.
The truth is that the box is already open. AI is shaping our workflows, our expectations, and our future. This moment is not a warning, it's an invitation. By engaging thoughtfully and courageously, we can ensure that what ultimately emerges strengthens our profession and serves our patients. After all, some boxes are worth opening. You never know what you'll find inside. Shall we open the box?
Let's open it.
Well, that's what I call a positive outcome.
It's chocolate.
And I guess this is where we pull in the famous film quote, life is like a box of chocolates, you never know what you're going to get.
But if there's a chance for chocolate, always open the box. Thank you for attending, and enjoy the rest of ECR.
Thank you.